Hey there, this is Matthew Jennings, and on this episode of Peachjar Extra Credit, we are unlocking some of the potential buried inside your DSLR. Stick around. Hey there, we are here in the beautiful Back Bay of Newport Beach, California. I have my trusty assistant with me today, my beautiful golden retriever named Duke. You might see him pop up in the videos every now and then. Sometimes he has opinions and ideas he wants to share. But today we are really talking about unlocking the full potential of your DSLR. So if you've ever wanted to get out of that green auto mode and to some of the other cool things that your DSLR can do, that's our goal here today. And we're going to try to do this in a way that makes it very simple and uncomplicated. I'm going to talk about three primary things you need to be concerned with, and that is shutter, your aperture, and your f-stop. So let's start with shutter speed. And basically, shutter speed is how fast or slow your camera lens opens and takes the picture. If it's really fast, it's going to capture a lot of detail and action. So if you have a bicyclist going down the path here and I have a really fast shutter speed, it's actually going to look like the bicycle standing still. I mean, you'll be able to count the spokes in the wheel. Versus a really slow shutter speed, when the bicyclist goes by, it might just be a blurry mess. So I'm able to set my shutter priority. So most DSLRs are going to have something like this, where I can turn it to the S and have shutter priority or the A and aperture priority. Right now I've got it on the S for shutter priority. And then on my Sony A7, it tells me right here in the bottom left corner of the screen, when I rotate the dial, what my shutter speed is. So if I wanted to capture a bicyclist, I might start at 1/250. And that's going to freeze that bicycle. And that might give me the effect I want. And then based on what I'm looking for, I might go up and down a couple of stops. I might go down a little slower shutter speed to get a little bit more blur on those tires so it looks like the bicycle's moving. But it freezes the cyclists themselves so you can really see the detail in what the cyclist is wearing, right? Or you could do this with birds. If I had some birds flying through the shot right now, if I had too low of a shutter speed, too slow, you're gonna hear it go, chick, chick. Those birds are just gonna be a blurry hot mess. Versus if I have it too fast, chick, chick, it'll go really quick and it's gonna capture the detail even in their feathers and wings. So you wanna base your shutter speed off of what you're taking a picture of. For example, at sports, I usually start at football somewhere around 1/250th. And then I go up and down based on what kind of shots I'm getting from there and some of the other things that we're going to talk about, like light, your aperture, your ISO settings, some of these other things. But just know it's this simple. Put it on shutter speed. Your camera's going to take care of all the other settings. And what it's saying is you're going to determine then how fast or how slow your shutter speed is. You see those beautiful shots of the Milky Way, right, at night. We've all seen those shots. It's camera on a tripod with an outrageously slow shutter speed to get those stars blurring through the sky. If you had a faster shutter speed, it'd just be darkness. It'd be a black sky. There'd be no stars even because not enough light is coming in before that aperture and that shutter opens and closes. So that's shutter speed. How fast or how slow your camera captures what's in front of you. It's easy to experiment with. Put it on that shutter priority, go outside, take a few pictures, make changes to the dial, go extreme, go really slow, go really fast, find stuff in the middle there, and you'll get a really quick feel for how it works. Okay, so let's talk about aperture priority next. So by turning my dial from the S to the A, I'm now telling the camera I want to prioritize how big the opening in my lens is. And now this will also impact some of the other areas. But by using the aperture priority, your camera's going to take care of all the other settings, your ISO, your shutter speed, everything else. And what you're going to do is determine how big the opening in your lens is by adjusting the dial. And again, that's reflected here on the back of my screen. Now, this is what's kind of confusing. The bigger the number, the smaller the opening is. That's going to impact two things. The amount of light coming into your camera and your camera's ability to capture the image in front of you, and how much is in focus. So just kind of like your pupil out in the sunlight, it dilates. When you're out in the sunlight, it gets smaller. When you're in a dark room, it gets bigger to let in more light. That's the aperture on your camera. So the bigger the number, the smaller the opening, the less light that's coming in, the greater your depth of field is, which means if you have a higher number, like maybe an f22, you hear f-stop, f22, you're going to take a picture of someone. Not only is their face going to be in focus, but everything behind them for a good distance is also going to be in focus. Now, we've all experienced those times where we just don't want whatever's behind that person to also be in focus. We want to blur that background. So that's a good example of a lower f-stop. The lower the number, the bigger the opening, the more light's coming into the camera, and the lower your depth of field. So you can go as low on the aperture as your lens will allow. There are some lenses that will go so low that somebody's eyebrow could be in focus and the depth of field is so low that their ear is blurred out. So if you are taking a picture of somebody, you want to kind of play around with that aperture a little bit so that you're getting the effect that you want. Obviously you want their face to be in focus, and if you're trying to blur the background, like right now, this background is slightly blurred, if that's the effect you're going for, the aperture is what's going to give you that. It's really easy to play around with. You just turn that dial to aperture, and then it takes care of everything else for you. You go out, take a few shots, adjust the dial, go with a higher aperture, go with a lower aperture, and see what happens and see the impact it has. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is ISO. Now, ISO is how sensitive your camera is to the light that you're letting in. Now, all three of these things impact each other. The good news is when you use aperture priority or shutter priority, you're only having to focus on one of those things at a time. Your camera takes care of everything else. But let's set up a scenario. Let's say you're using a really high f-stop, maybe f22, which means your aperture is very small. The opening in the back of the lens is very small. So not a lot of light is coming in. And then let's say you're using a high shutter speed, which means the shutter is going really quick and taking that image. Now you're letting even less light in, which means something has to give somewhere unless you're in a really bright environment like maybe today. And that is ISO. And that's the sensitivity of your camera to the surrounding light. Now, if you're just playing with aperture and shutter priorities, camera is going to handle the ISO for you. So if you just want to avoid this last one for right now, just play around with aperture and shutter speed. See what kind of impacts those have as you go out and experiment and play with the dial and adjust those things. But ISO is also something that you can start to play with. So once you get comfortable with aperture and shutter priority, then you can come over here and go to manual mode. And now you're adjusting aperture, shutter, and your ISO. And you can adjust the ISO again with the dials in your camera, just looking at the screen back here. And it's the sensitivity of your sensor to light. So if you're using a very quick shutter speed and a higher aperture, which means a narrower opening, you're going to have to bump up your ISO a little bit to compensate for the shot. Otherwise, it could be very, very dark. Imagine taking a picture of somebody and behind them is a really bright window. We've all seen this, right? And the person is dark because the camera is focused on that light. It's letting in a lot of light, so the person is all washed out. Well, if you put your camera in full manual mode and you are looking at adjusting the aperture, the shutter, and the ISO properly, you can take that photo and the person standing in front of you will be not only in focus, but well lit, and it won't be blown out by the light behind them. That's the beauty and power of putting your camera into a more manual situation. So the three considerations are shutter speed. That's how quick your camera takes a photo. You can experiment with that by just putting it in the shutter priority mode, adjusting the dial, and going out and taking shots and seeing what happens. There's aperture, which is the opening of your lens. So the higher the number, the smaller the opening, the more is going to be in focus. The lower the number, the bigger the opening, the less depth of field you're going to have. Obviously, with a smaller aperture, higher number, less light comes in. Lower aperture, lower f-stop, you've got a wider opening, more lights coming in. So those are the impacts there. Again, put it in aperture priority, go out, adjust it, take a few shots, see what happens. The last one you've got to be concerned with is ISO, and that's again the sensitivity of your camera's sensor to light. So when you go into full manual mode, right, if you've got a higher shutter speed with a higher aperture, a lower opening, you bump up that ISO, and each one plays off of each other, and everything comes down to light. Your shutter speed needs light to capture the image, your aperture needs light to come into the lens to capture the image, and your ISO needs to be adjusted properly to capture the image. You're going to find, by playing with these settings, there's going to be limits you're going to run into. For example, a really high ISO. Maybe you put a really high ISO in there to compensate for a quick shutter and a really wide opening, a lower f-stop. And you're going to find that if you go too high of an ISO, your images start to get grainy, kind of like those old black and white photos. There's a lot of noise, they call it, in that photo. So you're going to find really quickly what you like and what you don't like just by experimenting. You will not break your camera by using these modes. So I highly encourage you, get out of that green auto, try aperture, play around with the dial, go out, take photos. Don't do this in real time, like at an event where you're dependent on taking really good photos. Take some time on the side, go out and experiment with this. Just take a walk around the city that you're in, experiment with aperture, experiment with shutter, try the manual mode, experiment with that ISO, break out of auto. It will change the way you look at the world. It'll change the way you look at light. You will be a better photographer. You'll be a better videographer by exploring the modes that you have available to you. And it's really easy to get started. Okay, let me give you a couple of examples. I'm gonna take a picture really quick of this plant. And I'm going to use a lower aperture number, which is going to give me a bigger opening and a shallower depth of field. Okay, now I'm going to adjust my aperture. I'm in aperture priority. I'm just going to adjust that dial up to a higher f-stop number. That's going to give me a smaller opening, less lights coming into the camera. I'm going to take the same shot, and you'll see the difference in how much is in focus. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Happy to jump in there and answer anything you've got. If you've got any tips or tricks, put those in the comments below as well. It's always great to have that community support and input. If you liked this content, please like, share, comment, follow for more. That's it we got for today. We'll see you soon.